la cucaracha ya no puede caminar. Falta, here he comes. Here's the rabbi.
Oh! Shalom, shalom, my friends. Oh, shalom, my enemies. This is your old pal, Rabbi Sol Solomon, founder and spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck. And I just rolled out of bed. It was so early. We're supposed to be talking to this man a little bit later, but I couldn't wait. I had to get him on the program immediately because I am so delighted and excited to be talking to Don Pearl. Let me tell you a little bit about Don Pearl. He is a beloved Spanish and social studies teacher in Colorado. He lectured at the University of Northern Colorado. He holds a bachelor's from Rochester University, a Juris Doctor. Were you a lawyer? Is that the deal? Do you have a law degree?
I do.
Oh my God, he's a lawyer, he's a legal guy. And he even got another master's there for teaching Spanish, which he got to do at the university. He is now using his retirement years to be an activist and to write poetry. And a former student wrote this wrote about his life story for an honors anthropology assignment. And she called this A Voice for the Voiceless, the History of Donato Pearl. And so you are as sweet as a donut, Don. Welcome and shalom to the neighborhood. Hello, how you doing?
Shalom to you on this Sabbath. I'm fine. How are you doing? So nice to see you, hear your voice. I really like your braids.
Oh, aren't they lovely? They've been growing out because there's no barber shop around here.
You're well cultivated. They're well cultivated.
And you're looking good too. You're looking fabulous. I'm taking my styling tips from Frida Kahlo's eyelashes here. So I figured this is just like that. She didn't trim them. Why should I? But okay, here's my question for one of many questions. First of all, you're Jewish.
Correct.
What the hell brought you to Colorado in the first place?
Oh, what brought me to Colorado?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, a number of things brought me to Colorado. First of all, there was a job in the 60s as a bank examiner, and I had been working in the East as a bank examiner, and I applied for this transfer to Colorado. That was 1969.
69, a wonderful.
Well, before your time. And so that.
Not really, but okay. It's been a while since I've, anyway. Yeah. Continue? Yes, please continue. Don't mind me.
So, all right. So, and I met my first wife in Colorado, and on a whim, I went and practiced law back in New York. And
so you were a New York Jew lawyer?
Correct.
What kind of law were you doing?
I did a little bit of everything, and I was just a novice at just about everything.
Well, contracts? Did you defend criminals? Did you prosecute? What kind of work were you doing?
I did a little bit of everything. So, for example, a woman came to me. The city wanted to build a water line under her property, and she asked me to defend herself. She didn't have any money, so I took her pay in carrots.
What? Yeah.
In carrots.
How many carrots could she have possibly given you?
A couple of bushels. That's one reason why I think I was fired, because I wasn't bringing any money into the firm.
No, that's wrong kind of carrots if you're in the New York Diamond District. I'll tell you that.
Somebody else came, had a motorcycle, had a ticket. He was on a motorcycle, and he was speeding, and so I defended him. We went to court, and
turn off the goddamn cell phone.
I turned it off.
What's the matter with you? Yes. Continue. So this person with a motorcycle comes in.
Yes, he has a ticket. He needs some defense. He was speeding. And so I went to court with him. The court was about 15 miles west of Endicott, New York, which is where I was practicing. And he was found guilty, but I defended him, and he paid me in marijuana. Another reason I think why I was fired.
Wow. Let me ask you, I mean, it's many years after, and now it's legal half the time.
Many years ago.
did you distribute it, or did you consume it, or have to?
I consumed it.
Wow.
I consumed it. I distributed some of it to my friends. I thought it was pretty fair payment since he was found guilty anyway.
Well, yeah, that's it. So, did you think you were any good as a lawyer? Is there a reason that you gave it up and found other things to do?
I was a novice. Let's say there were possibilities there, but I never really learned to navigate the system. I always thought justice should have both eyes closed, but she never has both eyes closed. She has one eye open, and I always had a heart for let's say, the dispossessed.
So is the system stacked against the common person, certainly the poor person, the socially not climbed person, if you will?
Yeah, someone without means is definitely behind the 8 ball.
I have a question from the gallery. Ask about the staircase. What staircase? What do you do about? Yeah. Do you watch Netflix? I don't know what the hell.
I have not watched it. No.
Yeah, something called the staircase. I don't even know what the hell it is.
I think I'm culturally deprived here in this area.
I mean, he was a barrister, not a banister. I'm sorry. Okay, continuing. So, that's terrible.
That was rich.
You stopped doing law, and then what you were mentioning, what you were doing after that?
Well, I was fired for my job. I wasn't bringing any money into the firm.
Yeah. So, and then what did you do? How did you go on, progress with your life? You had the wife. What were you doing? Yeah.
Well, on a whim, I took a course. Okay, this was in New York State, so I took a course in Spanish, SUNY Binghamton, and was entranced by the language. So I followed suit, and the two of us, we sold our possessions, and we bought a one-way ticket to Guadalajara, Mexico, where I entered a school to learn Spanish, and we lived with a family.
How long? For how long did you do this?
2 years.
What was that like? Did you love living in Mexico? Was it?
I did. I felt like I was home. Yeah. Life was full of music, full of color. The streets were musical and colorful. The city went to sleep at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and didn't wake up until 5.
Oh, I love that. That's my kind of life. Yeah.
But I got a job teaching English in Guadalajara. I was given a pseudonym, and so there was a bank account in my name with my pseudonym, which was Daniel Torres Altamirano. So I lived that name for 2 years.
4K. Why did you? Yeah, no. Why did you need a pseudonym?
Well,
I mean, marijuana there.
I was an alien. I was an alien, so I was given a pseudonym by.
Oh, so now you weren't legally living there, sort of?
Well, still legally. We had a tourist visa only. Yeah.
I mean, so you overstayed and you just stayed.
Absolutely.
But with a new name, you could do what you. Okay. Wow. So why did you leave? Why did you come back to the States?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think if I had to do it over again, I would have stayed. But I did miss the States, and my wife, she was missed by her family. So weighing the pros and cons, we left. It was a great experience, but never went back. Well, but I took that, it was life-changing, but I took that experience of learning the language and the culture and the warmth of the people and the music. I took that back with me. And so that became a part of me. And thus, I got a master's in Spanish also. So I was teaching English and teaching Spanish in the junior high. Am I going to go on with this?
Colorado. You didn't go back to New York. You moved to.
No, I went back to Colorado.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got a teaching certificate. I went back to school, got a teaching certificate. In the meantime, a program opened in downtown Denver called Oasis of Chandala. Now that program was for the dispossessed. The Chandalas in India are the lowest in the caste system. So this was a program designed, really, it was during the Carter administration where there was some startup money. And so this program was designed specifically to offer a helping hand to the dispossessed, the unrepresented. And I worked at that program. I was the assistant director, and I also ran the kitchen. So yeah. So I would teach GED classes in the kitchen.
Was it an ashram kind of a thing, or?
Well, it was a non-residential program.
Okay.
So it wasn't exactly that, but it was
So
supposed to be
people just came in for snacks. It was a nostrum.
the bathroom.
I do that sort of thing. I'm sorry.
That was really quick of you.
That was quick, yeah. Stupid, but quick. But okay. So I missed that. And continue. I'm sorry. I'm being distracted here.
They're throwing things at you. Next thing you're gonna have is a hook.
So here's the deal. Here's this.
You should never mess up your braids, though.
You know, why I'm holding. I got an etrog in my hand just for this Jewish. So in Colorado, there you're working for both. You're teaching part time and you're also helping at this place, the Shambhala.
Program. Yeah, I was working on my teaching certificate, and it's this program, Oasis, where we were actually, let's say, designed to help the dispossessed, those who it was a non-residential program for ex-offenders. Generally, those ex-offenders were involved in drugs. The whole idea was to offer them an entryway into, well, our world, the world of whereby they could be functional in society. Actually, we were making progress until Reagan got elected.
Oh, well, there you go.
It was during the last 2 years of the Carter administration.
But let me ask you, did you ever, in dealing with these people, were you ever threatened? Did you ever have a problem? Because you were dealing with some danger. Some of them probably were innocent. Some of them just in bad places at the wrong time. And some of them were probably like, whoa. Did you ever have a real problem?
Nobody would. We went and we did outreach at the jail. You know, everybody's innocent in the jail.
Of course. Yeah, I hear you. But
yeah. So no, I didn't have an issue with any. Some people were just so high on whatever it was, angel dust. We would just drag them into the shower.
Wait. They were in jail and high on angel dust? What?
Well, no. They would be released on probation, but
yes.
Or they would be released to come to our program where they would get group counseling or GED training like that. So I had my specific job there. We had a staff that was divided up. Some did counseling. There was a Vietnam veteran who did counseling. I did the GED program. There was job counseling also for those who didn't know how to write a resume. It was all kind of those kinds of programs. Actually, as I said, we were starting to make progress when Reagan was elected, and then the program was disbanded.
Right. Well, it had to go for military hardware. That was his thing.
Military hardware. Exactly.
So, let me ask you: in the years that you were teaching, almost 20 years in junior high school, what are some of the funniest, most ridiculous things that happened? You don't have to name names of idiot students, but I'm sure you had a couple. Tell me some stories.
Oh my gosh, stories. Okay, so I'll tell you one thing that came to mind is that there was a unit that we used to do on the Holocaust.
A unit? You found a eunuch from the Holocaust? Oh, a unit.
UNIT unit, yes.
Sorry, I just went nuts there for a minute.
And we read Elie Wiesel's Night. That was our project, okay? So how do I make that come alive? So I had the class pick numbers out of a hat, and then the 5 numbers that were selected, they would be the Jews, and they would sit in the back.
And did they have to tattoo the numbers on their arms, or they could just?
I never got to that place.
Okay.
Never got to that place. So, but when they came into the classroom, they all had to stand. The 5 of them that were picked, they had to stand until everybody else came in and sat down. Then they could sit down, and I would throw the books at them instead of handing them to them. All right. So I was treating them as second-class citizens. It was a really hard gig, but a fight broke out in one of those classes whereby racial epithets were hurled back and forth. It was almost like this was an experiment in
there was a book called The Wave. I don't know if you ever read it.
Blue Eyes. It's called
Blue Eyes. Yeah. But there was this movie about where a teacher did that in a classroom situation.
Yeah.
And I think, and half the class was kind of the upper echelon, and the other half wasn't. Yeah. It's called Blue Eyes, apparently. So you were doing that, unknowing you were creating this. So what happened in the fight?
Well, I had to send them both to the counseling office.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they took it so seriously. And I found that was really true. You can create a simulation, and people will take it very seriously. In fact, even to this day, here it's 20 years later, sometimes I'll see somebody on the street and they will remember that experience.
Was it heavy? Did you ever try that again, or you were like, no,
Yes,
I'll
I did
keep
it.
the damn book?
I did it every year.
Really?
For a week. Yeah, it was a really hard gig to do, but I did it every year. And then the whole idea was at the end of that gig, I wanted people to write about what was your experience? What did you feel when you were either one of the isolated ones, the marginalized ones, or in the classroom looking at the marginalized ones in another way? Some of the people who are in the main class, who are the, let's say, non-Jews, they would want to go to the back of the room where the, in quotes, where the Jews were. So I found that a kind of an interesting interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
So let's see.
I'm trying to think. Maybe I would have done it with Roots, where I have half the room be whites and half the room actual whippings and hangings.
That would have gone over very well.
Because so fewer papers to grade if you kill a few of the kids. I mean, and not really a big loss. Let's face it. This is Colorado school district. But would you say, since you taught for a very long time?
I did.
Well, for 2 decades. How are the students back in, say, the 90s?
Yes.
I don't know how far back you went then, to when you left the.
When I left.
Are they dumber? Are they faster? Are they better in certain ways and worse in others? How would you say students have changed in 20 years?
This is a very good question. When I got there to John Evans, it was pretty much an inner city school, John Evans in Greeley. The demographics of the school were probably 65% Anglo, 35% Hispanic.
Wow.
The demographics changed, and the Hispanic students, they were pretty much English speaking. They were pretty much assimilated. But in the course of time, those demographics changed. So when I left the school, it had probably reversed, 65% Latino and 35% Anglo. And the 65% who were Latino, most of them spoke Spanish as their native language. So the demographics of this part of the country had changed. This was one reason why I boycotted high-stakes standardized testing, because we were putting those children at a terrible disadvantage. Since English often wasn't their native language, they spoke it, but their native language was Spanish. So the test in and of itself was, on its face, unfair.
Well, so let's get into that, because that was your first real big issue. Because you were before then, yes, you defended people as a lawyer. Yes, you helped folks who were ex-convicts and helping them get on there, and helping the dispossessed and the downtrodden, or as they say, a voice for the voiceless, as that former student of yours wrote about you. But
rage against the machine.
Yeah, and having this rage against the machine there. But here's
said.
Another deal. I mean, America, United States, is essentially an English-speaking country. Why is it wrong to force people, quote unquote, to speak the one unified language properly?
And you just answered your own question.
Talk to me. Why? How can I answer that? Was I grammatically incorrect there?
The whole notion of forcing people is going to be counterproductive anyway. But you could start with their native language and use that as a point of departure to gradually bring them into a new culture. That's humane. However, to force them to learn, and also then to force a test on them, isolates them and turns them against the system anyway. And they feel so isolated from the system as it is. And those are the people who are at the in the shadows of life. So
if you don't do well on this test that you're talking about, the CSAP test, does that affect where you get into college? Is that, I thought the ACT and the SAT were the things for that. What does the CSAP stop you from doing if you fail, if you do badly?
It oppresses you. I lost my thought here.
Oh dear, I do that to people. Yeah.
So
I'm a test for people who have to talk to me. It's easy to fail when you're. I mean,
the CSAP and college admissions.
Well, CSAP college admissions, right?
No, it isn't college admission.
What is it?
They've changed the anagram. It isn't college admission, but it puts tremendous pressure on students, and particularly if these students feel somehow marginalized or isolated, don't feel part of the mainstream, it oppresses them even more. And that's why, oh, I know where this thought was going, that we could look at the demographics and see who drops out of school. And if you look at the demographics, you will see that for the most part, people of color are those who have dropped out of school. It continues that way. And why do they drop out? Simply because they feel unaccepted, their culture, their language, they feel at odds with the mainstream. And that essentially is the purpose. Well, we can go two ways with this. The purpose of public education is ideally to bring out the best in everybody. And that was the mission of Dewey around the turn of the 20th century, who really made great inroads in the importance of a public education in which everybody's educated.
You know, we listen to him, but do we? I'm sorry. Continue. But let me ask you this. I mean, this idea of the people who are of color, if you will, and those are most likely to drop out. But does it have anything to do with the test? I mean, there's so many other factors. They may not have money. They may not have status. They may have terrible parental issues at home. If they have two parents at home, you should pardon the stereotypical idea of not having two folks at home. But seriously, so maybe the CSAP test is just an offshoot of that, but not really, oh, I failed the test, I'm going to give up and I'm going to quit school.
You're exactly right. It's just the tip of the iceberg. It's the tip of the iceberg. But
or the tip of the Goldberg, as my people like to say.
Yes. Goldberg would be good too. So yeah. It's a symptom of what's really wrong with public education. And so what we can do is go to the root and say, really, we need to address public education and that every child is valuable. And how can we bring out the best in each child? And we're not going to bring out the best in each child by forcing a high stakes, I'll underline that word, high stakes, so that phrase, on children. We're not going to bring out their best.
Let me ask you something though. If it's they're not children anymore, they're already teenagers. You know, if they're taking that level test. But a question is, wouldn't it be lovely if one or two courses every semester from elementary school on were essentially civics, right? Of being a decent person, of how to do the most important basic parts of society and take part in society, and how to get along, and how to not be violent. You know, wonderful things to teach them to be great human beings.
Well
but you still also have to teach people higher level math, appreciation of literature, the social and the regular hard sciences, the things that create the greater things that we all enjoy, be it technology, be it science, be it curing things. So at a certain point, yes, it would be great if these people didn't feel disenfranchised. And so that we led them along and it's like, okay, here's, you know, this is a class that everybody can pass because it's about getting along in the world. However, here's another class where you're going to be reading James Joyce. And if you're not ready, you're not ready. You may never be. What do?
Why should it always be in English?
Because it's in English, it's an American country.
So have you traveled in Europe at all?
A little bit. I sat in Auschwitz for a little while. It was not pleasant.
How was that? I think it's rare to go to Europe and find people who speak only one language. True,
very true. But how polyglot can we be if we suddenly get an influx of Russian immigrants for whatever reason they escape Putin, and we suddenly get 10 million Russian immigrants? Do we suddenly make America have Russian be a third language? Yeah, I've been walking around with Google Translate all the time.
The more universal we can become as a society, the more we will feel at one with the rest of the world.
Yeah, but the point is, the rest of the world, if they want to come to this country, I don't go to Italy, and it's lovely when they speak English. It's lovely when they have signs in English and stuff, but I don't expect it. I don't demand it of them. If everything's in Italian and I'm there, it's their country. It's Italian. I get it. They speak English, whatever that language is. But you come to this country, I don't speak Yiddish all day.
Are you a traveler? Are you a traveler, a tourist, or are you going to stay?
What? Let's just say, let's say I wanted to stay. I would learn their language. It would be incumbent upon me. If I go to Swahili land, wherever it is, Swahili, which I think is near Detroit, then I would have to learn Swahili while I was there. And if I wasn't as good as the native Swahili speakers, I would be second-class citizen until I got to the level where I could, you know? Do not think that's right.
I think you're asking a great deal of yourself. If
To
you
learn
can
Swahili, oh, you bet.
as an adult, you probably never would be considered a native. I mean, if you're going to think of it that way. But if you take children who hear another language at home all the time, for them to be in an English-speaking society school is often putting them at a disadvantage. We can use their native language so that they can, let us say, move forward. We can use it, but to oppress them, forcing them to learn it is often counterproductive, and they're the ones who drop out of society.
Well, let me ask you, when you were taking this stand, when you were a teacher at this junior high school, the Evans, John Evans, Bob Evans, Bill Evans, Gil Evans, some Evans University, junior high school, and you took this stand. Were you the only teacher who
in the school
did? I mean, were there other people who agreed with you, but they wouldn't? They went along anyway. Were you the alone?
So, Rabbi, I have to change the subject slightly, but
please.
we're going pretty much in the same direction. So once I started studying what went on as far as the manufacture of this testing, I was amazed that all we had to do was follow the money. And who makes these tests? Who makes these tests? And there are corporations like Pearson and McGraw-Hill who manufacture these tests. They have their lobbyists. They talk to their lobbyists. Their lobbyists go to the state legislators. The state legislators, are influenced, let us say, by these lobbyists. And their job, that is the legislator's job, is to convince the public that these tests, mandated tests, are essential for the progress of the students, which is really false. Why is it false? Because it's all motivated by follow the money, follow Pearson, follow McGraw-Hill. They're going to make the test.
What would you replace them with? How would you calibrate? How do you measure success in a course that isn't just a humanist course, that isn't just a general understanding something, but where you really have to remember facts and figures and things build upon other things sequentially in terms of learning? How do you measure?
I can't wait to answer that question.
Go for it, goddammit. Do it.
Have faith in the teachers in the classroom.
Okay. How does the teacher measure? I'm not talking about the state. How does the teacher quantify who remembers what, who knows what?
The teacher develops her own assessments or his own assessments for the students. And those are really fine ways, and I mean that in both senses of the word. Those are fine ways to measure how the students are doing. And they're much more three-dimensional and allow the student certain creativity with regard to those assessments, as opposed to filling in, what do we call them now? Those Scantrons.
Oh, fair enough. But you have a classroom full of people who are trying to learn Spanish. Let's say they're all novice English people are taking Spanish because they have to, right? In junior high school. By the end of term, there are some people in there. Sorry?
They don't have to. They're not taking Spanish because
they have to take a language of some sort. They chose Spanish versus Italian versus Hebrew versus,
even that, you're going on another course here. Even that is optional. Taking a foreign language, a modern language, is optional in junior high.
Not in college. Maybe in certain. I think in high school you don't have to at this point. Maybe in some.
That's right. You don't have to.
Okay, it's an optional. They decide to. They want to take Spanish. All right. Let's say you go through a semester with these people, right? Or I don't know if it's maybe a whole year in junior high school. There's some who are 90, 95, 98 A-level students, and there's some who are 70, 80. But when you grade, do you say, oh boy, 70 person, you came in with a real disadvantage. So therefore you deserve an A just as much as this person who can actually write 5 paragraphs in Spanish. You're laughing, but
I'm laughing. I don't quite know how to respond to that because that's totally not the case.
Okay.
So, would you phrase your question again so that I can?
I don't think I can. I'm saying
Know my way out of it.
if you have the people who are not given the leg up initially, they're struggling a bit, right?
Right.
But they're trying, but they're just, some people are better at languages than others, but they're all in the same class, right? So
Okay.
without a statistical measuring test of something where they fill out the path, which word is the correct word, which is the proper verb tense, which is this form. Without that kind of testing, how can you really tell? Okay, this person, really, oh, they're fabulous. They can go right on to intermediate Spanish. And this person, not so much, but they worked just as hard. They worked even harder. And for them, oh, getting a 70 on this quiz is like this person getting 102.
So would you agree, Rabbi, would you agree that language skills are very diverse? It's almost like a panorama. For example, some people can be poetic, but not know grammar. I think Hemingway was that way. And other people can know grammar, but yet they're very, very constricted and don't have that kind of creative sense for language. Would you agree with that, Rabbi?
I would agree with that. I would agree, the thought, but you know what? I'm also someone who says if you can't get the thought out of your head properly, it's useless because you can't tell or share exactly what you want to say.
If you can't get the what out of your head?
Even if you're poetic and wonderful, you have these great ideas, if they're all in your head, it's no point to anybody. You got to be able to get them out correctly.
What did you say? If you can't get the what out of your head?
You can't get the idea out. If you may have the best idea in the world, but if you
Yeah.
can't phrase it in a way that will communicate to the world around you.
Can you learn that?
Well, you tell me. Can everybody learn that in the same level? Oh, this is good. Oh, I'm having fun here. We're talking, by the way, with Don Pearl. By the way, what is your Hebrew name?
David.
David! Wonderful name. David Pearl in the neighborhood. We're bantering, we're lecturing. But you didn't answer the question, though, of when you were anti-CSAP and refused to administer the test. Did any of your fellow colleagues or female colleagues stand with you?
Well, that's a good question. Some of them secretly did, but nobody came forward. They realized for the most part what a fraud it was too. Yes, because as I said, if you follow the money, you could see that it has totally to do with capitalism and nothing to do really with education.
So how did that all work out? How did you personally took that stand? Did you take a crap from the admins? Did parents come to you? I mean, what was the fallout of staking your claim?
Oh, wow. So I would say fallout from my claim. Well, I was suspended for 2 weeks while the test was being given. So somebody else, another teacher would come and I couldn't go back to school for 2 weeks. But you know, the bar exam only takes 2 days.
I've never heard of it. Were you suspended with or without pay?
Without pay.
Oh. Otherwise, that's a great gig. But no, without the pay is pretty bad. So, but that was 1 year, right? I don't know. Do they do this every year? The CSAP testing every grade every year?
They did it every year, and then they changed the anagram. They call it something else, TCAP, TCAP, and then every 2 years or so they change the anagram. But essentially, it's the same thing.
So, what happened the year after that?
I couldn't go back. Well, I made it my last year.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I couldn't see myself ever administering that test. So I had an offer from UNC to teach Spanish, so I took that.
So but were you full time at the University of Northern Colorado? You were adjunct or no?
I was a lecturer.
Oh, that's all right. So that's kind of a full, because I know what they pay adjuncts there per class. It's not comparable to a full-time teaching salary at a junior high school. Could you get benefits or anything? How did you manage?
I got insurance.
Good. Oh, okay. That's so how did you like teaching college students versus junior high school kids?
Wow. Oh, it was just so totally different format.
Why?
I loved it in a different way. I loved the kids in junior high. They were my children. And these are emerging adults at the university. So I would treat them differently. I would treat them
okay, but
almost like peers.
Almost like what?
almost like peers, because they're
Oh.
adults.
Okay, got it.
Have
And was that
discussions.
easier?
Was it easier? Emotionally easier, and academically it was more challenging.
Fair enough. Okay, that's
Fair
so.
enough.
Did you retired from that? Why? Because you still have all this energy. Why are you no longer teaching Spanish? Because everybody loves you. You had just like the most sweetest reputation as a professor there. Everybody, oh, it's done. You know, huggy, huggy, huggy. Why did you stop?
Well, it was time to leave. I just felt it was time to leave. I was 75, and it was time to leave.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm just wondering because you seem like the kind of person who loves to teach and would gladly do it until you drop dead in front of a classroom when you're 90. You know.
I used to say that. When are you going to leave? Somebody would ask me, or people would ask me. I said, they're going to have to drag me out of here feet first.
But not true. Not true. You
Not
left.
true. Here I am. Here I am, still upright, still above ground.
Right. Let's get to the sad part of the conversation. And not the Holocaust, which is I talk about so often that it's not even sad anymore. It's just something that I bring up because I have to, because I'm Jewish. If you don't mention the Holocaust every 15 minutes, we all disappear. So I mentioned the Holocaust, but you had to go through an ordeal in a few years ago. You mentioned that you were married once, you got married again.
Yes.
Right? And you lost your wife, she was sick for a while. And you had to not only deal with that, but get over her loss, which is very, very tough on you. Is that what started you on poetry?
Oh, wow.
Heavy question, yeah.
It is heavy. Well, I have always had, let us say, waves of the muse come to me and write poetry. Somehow it strikes me, and other times it doesn't strike me. So we all go through hard times and amazing times and fourth dimensional times in our lives, whereby nothing is normal, particularly now with this pandemic. This is love in the time of, not love in the time of cholera, but love in the time of pandemic.
Love in the time of Corona. Yeah, right. There you go. That's the sequel. Love in the time of Corona. But
it is a sequel.
It took you a long time to pull out of a very, not a dark place, but what must have been an incredibly difficult place. How did you do it? Was it writing? Was it meeting with other people? Was it just time? What gets you through?
All of the above.
Was it marijuana? Did that help?
Yes, that's true. It was all of the above.
You're in Colorado. Oh, yeah. So, and now is that helping the coping mechanisms that you had then? Are they helping now to get the information?
Yeah, so I'll say this about what happened after retirement is that I went to volunteer at the Immigration Refugee Center, whereby I could use many of the same skills that I had acquired. They used me to translate. And here we have students from all over the world, from sub-Saharan Africa, from East Asia. There were Rohingya, who are also displaced people.
What were you translating then? How Somalian is not Spanish? How would you do it?
Right, and there are also people from Latin America, from Mexico and Latin America. But so I would help out in the classroom. These are people, some of them almost my age, learning English for the first time, and it is their first written language. So to watch them just try to make the letters of the language was absolutely humbling. What their dedication to learn in their later years, I found absolutely amazing.
Are you still doing that? Not during Corona, but are you still, when this is over, God willing, still help there? Are you still volunteering and doing that?
Yeah, we closed. They're very reliant on the calendar of the school district. So they closed for spring break and we haven't reopened. So who knows when we'll reopen, or even if. That has to do with funding too. But anyway, so it's the Northern Colorado Refugee and Immigration Center, and I found it a light for those people, and so humbling that I could even participate in that, contribute to that.
I'm going to get back to the creative part, the poetry part. Question here. First of all, do you have a favorite all-time poet or poema,
Hmm.
verse, if you will, or couplet, or
So,
filthy, whichever, whatever. What?
all right, this
Yeah.
is what just popped into my head. So at the turn of the 20th century, 1898, there was a group of poets in Spain called La Generación de 98, the generation of 98. At that time, Spain had lost all its colonies and didn't even have the whole Iberian Peninsula. There was a piece there that was Portugal. And so the country was going through this, let us say, a depression of spirit for the whole country. A group of poets rose up called the generation of 98, because it was 1898. That was in the aftermath of the Spanish-American War, where Spain lost Cuba, Puerto Rico, the Philippines, and they had already lost all of South America and Mexico early on.
That's not a big outcome. Yeah.
They were suffering a, let us say, a national depression. So this group of poets rose up, one of whom was called Antonio Machado, was named Antonio Machado. And he wrote this, it just came into my head right now. And I'll tell you in Spanish, and then I'll translate it. It's caminante no hay camino, se hace el camino al andar. Walker, there is no road. We make the road on walking. So I think that really can be applied to our world today, when we are so totally out of control, our world so totally out of control, controlled by something we can't even see, a virus that is smaller than microscopic. So I think it makes really good sense to have that kind of feeling that, okay, we're totally out of control. We'll just make the road step by step as we walk. So that's just what came to mind.
That's a pretty prescient line right there. Let me ask you, do you have a favorite poem of yours, one that you feel most proud of having written, or is most personal to you?
Yeah, I don't have it with me though. It's a poem I wrote. It's kind of a rap poem I wrote in the aftermath of my boycott. And I took all those Latin sounding words like administration, institution, education, and rhymed it in a kind of a rap. It was really fun. It was fun to write.
All right.
It has appeared, it appeared in the Greeley Tribune.
Speaking again of Greeley, which is where you're living in northern Colorado. Now, your activism years ago had to do with that testing, but you left after 1 year. You just said, "The hell with this! I'm leaving the junior high school system here. I'm not going to deal with it." And then also, I had thought that you were pretty involved in the whole anti-fracking movement in northern Colorado, because they brought all the oil people in, and the machines. We're having a last laugh now. Nobody wants to buy the damn stuff. But here's the question. I mean, did you were threatened when you were?
Oh, that's true.
Anti ridiculous fracking, like 2 feet next to a junior high school sort of thing. So tell.
Exactly. Yeah, I received a couple of.
Yeah.
I was threatened. Yeah, in fact, the police came to my house, which was good, and the mayor called, also good.
Right.
So yes, I got a couple of threatening letters, something about veiled threats, but they were so poorly written. I just
see, these are the people who didn't pass CSAP. And they passed that test. See, if they'd studied but
they would have been in the forefront. They would have been in the forefront of the movement.
So
we need people well educated.
Did you ever feel really afraid, or did you realize, they're just morons and they're blowing off steam? And
I got a wave of fear. Who knows? I got a wave of fear, but I had to rise above it.
Yeah, I have to say, when I visited Greeley around that time, the one thing that I wouldn't say it turned my stomach, but that chilled me a little bit, was that see, from house to house to house, every other house, or more than that, there would be the sign, "We stand with oil and gas. We love it." I mean, who the fuck are they praying to? Who is their master? It's not just, okay, we know it's important to the economy, we know it can be a good thing, but this idea of, yes, we stand with OPEC. What kind of fucking idiots?
Rabbi, I'm going to bring you another sign right now.
Do it.
My friend Pat's bringing over here another sign, and I want you to see it. I want everybody to see it. Well, let's see here.
Yeah, pull out a little bit there. Well, our families, yes, deserve. Our families deserve. All right, clean air and sex. No, water. I'm just kidding. Clean air, our families. So, did you have that on your lawn?
We have it on our lawn, yes.
Yeah, but you have it now. Did you have it also back like 5 years ago?
No, we just had it recently, within the past few months.
Well, how is fracking there been going? I mean, right now it's probably pretty quiet, but how did things end up shaking out in terms? I mean, just it went away. People voted for it, and you live with it. Did you ever think of leaving the conservative town that you're in and moving to a place more like Boulder or a more liberal burg somewhere?
So, okay, getting back to what you just said, actually, we were instrumental. Our movement was instrumental in the passage of Senate Bill 181, which requires, okay, the key word here in the legislation is regulate. In other words, the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission has now been armed with regulating oil and gas as opposed to fostering it.
Good.
In the past, it was fostering. So that movement, or this movement that we contributed to, thus the sign.
Yeah. Our families deserve clean air and water. Yeah.
Has had positive effect with the legislature.
See, this morning I made a movement that fouled the water, but that's a very different kind of a.
You're excused. You're only human, Rabbi.
Barely, just barely.
Even though you are a liaison to the hereafter, you're still human.
But politics in Greeley, Colorado, I mean, with that woman who was elected, and then the Republicans didn't like her, so they made her go away because she was gay or something. Rochelle Galindo, all that stuff that was going on. I mean, it's a crazy fucking town for a small little city.
Well said. Well said. We have been in the limelight for all the wrong reasons. For example. Yeah, for example, just recently, the meatpacking plant.
Well, you guys know, you got, I don't know if you know this, but on Wednesday or Thursday, Greeley made the front page of the New York Times, and it was about reopening tattoo parlors, because this is the thing that the world really needs. This is like when people go without for 4 or 5 weeks, they can manage, but 6 weeks without a new tattoo. Oh my God! Yeah, just the mental anguish involved. What is wrong with that town where you live? I'm sure, but don't you get frustrated? I mean, the fact you are surrounded really by people who voted not only for Donald Trump, but they voted twice for George W. Bush back in the day. Don't you look around and go, how do I live next to these people?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I've asked myself that many times, but I think just maybe I've been called to be here in the middle of this, darkness, to offer a light.
Well, what is your current, I hate to put it like in a hippie-ish, what is your current cause? Is it still fracking? Are you picking up the mantle of any other societal ills once this disease ill goes away?
Oh, that's a really good question. I found a home at the Immigration and Refugee Center. I could just be happy doing that. Yeah, so whenever that comes back, I'll be happy doing that. In the meantime, we're sheltering in place as best we can.
Right.
You're a young man, so you don't have to be quite as concerned as we elder statesmen have to.
Have you lost anybody? Has anybody that you know died from COVID? Or have been seriously like ventilator sick and got better?
Well, let's see, your brother.
He wasn't ventilator sick.
He wasn't ventilator sick, but he did test positive.
He did test positive.
Yeah.
And who is talking? Someone named Pat, by the way, is helping you. Yes. Who is Pat in this situation, in this scenario? A longtime friend, or she sounds female.
Yes.
I can't, or well, the other Pat doesn't have a gender from Saturday Night Live, so I'm being very careful here. But this is a gendered female person. She sounds very nice. How do you?
Sweetheart friend, and that.
Okay. Does she want to come on camera and say hi and wave or something?
You want to wave?
Sure.
She's going to come over and wave.
Hello, here we go. Here comes Pat.
Hi.
Shalom, Pat. Oh,
Hello.
you look very goyish. You do not look remotely Jew-esque. Are you? What are you?
She's Italian.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Oh, so, well, very nice to meet you, by the way. Shalom.
Nice to meet you.
Are you retired? What do you do? How do you occupy your days when there isn't COVID all over the place?
Pat was instrumental in that sign, by the way.
Yeah, I'm in I'm a member of Well Air and Water, which is an anti-fracking movement. So there are a few of us in here,
Yeah.
in Greeley and we did do the signs, and
Yeah.
we work for that, and I do things, like play guitar and stuff like that for my personal.
Oh!
Habitat.
Would you mind? I mean, we could use a little bit. Well, it won't sound that great apparently on YouTube. But what song do you love to play more than any other? But besides Hava Nagila, yeah.
That's a hard question.
It's a hard question. Yeah.
What song do I like to play? Recently, I'd like to play the Simon and Garfunkel "Hazy Days of."
Hazy Days of Winter. Yeah. Okay. Look around, leaves are brown. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a great song.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So Mazel Tov. It's lovely to meet you, Pat. But we're talking to Don, so get the hell off camera. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Oh yeah, I am charmed, don't I? So
You are charming. Pat also works for Habitat for Humanity, and she volunteers at the Democratic headquarters.
Oh, so yeah, so serious.
So we met campaigning against fracking.
Oh, it's so romantic. Isn't that romantic?
Romantic.
It is.
Is that what Joyce said?
Something that isn't romantic. So I love so much about you, Don, even though sometimes we're political, you're to the left of me, no question. But there's one thing this man, in preparation for this interview, did or said that kind of disgusted me, I have to say. That made me really upset. I have to say this.
Yes,
I
Rabbi.
asked you for your patented, your favorite charoset recipe.
Yes, you didn't like it.
And you came back with something that was full of fruit.
Yes, of course.
What? Tell people your charoset recipe on the Sega plate. What do you put in that Sega plate in something that should be really delicious and full of, yes, apples, that's a fruit, but nuts and cinnamon, wine a little bit. What do you put in your charoset? What the hell's wrong with you? What? Tell us.
Dates, oranges.
Orange. Who the fuck puts oranges in charoset?
Yeah, we do.
Why?
Have you tried it? Try it sometime. And then, okay, some Manischewitz wine, and then cook it. Cook it with cinnamon and honey.
But you cook it? Oh, you cook it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about this.
We boil off the wine with the fruit and the nuts. It
Right.
thickens. Yes,
Don't
exactly.
boil your nuts. That'd be painful. But
What do you have in your hand there?
it's a wrong holiday, but I have an etrog and lulav. Just I don't have any Passover items in front of me. Actually, there's a Seder plate over there. You can find it.
Yeah.
It's all right. It's okay. But so what does it taste like? Does it taste? It must be really super sweet.
Yes, delicious. You should try it. You don't have to wait. You don't have to wait for Passover.
I know. So you boil off the wine with all the stuff in it.
Yes.
Is there walnuts? What the nuts do you put in there?
Yeah, almonds, walnuts. You can grind them up if you like.
All right. So that's more paste like. So it really is more
Exactly. Like mortar.
Okay.
Like mortar. Except it's delicious.
Oranges in it.
Yeah.
Jews couldn't wait for oranges to ripen before they left Egypt. How do you justify oranges in there? I don't know.
I don't justify it. It just was in the recipe, so I threw it in.
Well, was this a recipe was it like your mama made, or a recipe that as an adult you found?
I found it as an adult. I looked it up online.
I am curious. What were your parents like? Were they hippies or the Depression era, or what? What were your folks like?
I just had this thought. I'll answer that question in a minute. But I think you and I met 2 Shavuos ago because you walked by my office and you said, "Happy Shavuos." And,
Right.
and I don't quite know what prompted that, but maybe there was a sign on the door, "Pray for the peace of Jerusalem."
Yeah.
Something
I happen to be walking down the corridors of, because they don't have any guards there, so anybody can basically walk in, even
Anybody can walk in,
dressed like me.
even a rabbi.
Yeah. Well, I guess I saw a rabbi. They figure I won't be packing heat. maybe wrong. But so I'm walking down the hall, and then I see, all these goyim all over the place because it's Colorado. And then this person who's got a sign on the door, or a thing, I think from the New York Times, an article about Jerusalem. I'm like, what the hell? And also you had all these rainbowy things in there. So I thought you were Fagala, quite honestly. Never occurred to me that you were not only married once, but twice, and that you like girls. Doesn't, but I think it's lovely. I think you can, whoever wants to do whatever they want to do, they want to bend over, then and I'm fine with it.
Dentistry is your next profession, right?
Because I just love people.
You should be a rabbi in prison.
I should be a rabbi in prison. I go over very well. But that was, yes, I think
that would be excellent.
But this was not 2 years. This had to be 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. Time constricts. And actually, Dave used to see you even before then, vaguely. You didn't really meet, but at the Seder's at the temple in Greeley.
Oh, did you go to those Seder's at the synagogue?
So before I was banned. Yes.
Yeah.
I still could before Rabbi Sarah said, no. I tried coming in one time for Purim. This was not fair. I tried to dress as a cute little character. I wanted to be a narwhal for Purim, and came to the Purim festival, and my narwhal horn looked a bit too phallic. It was just a paper towel roll with a stocking around it, but it didn't look like a narwhal horn so much as the kind of thing a black person would show you in prison. So yeah.
Nobody mistook you for Haman.
No. No one mistook me for a normal human being either. It was a sad thing. But that's how you met me and how you met Dave and how we've known each other. Now, what the hell was the question I asked you in the first place?
I don't remember now, but
your parent, your mom and dad. Your mom and pop. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
America, were they immigrants? What was your background there?
They were second generation, or were they first generation? Their parents were born in Europe.
Right.
My mom's parents were born in Lithuania. I can remember my grandfather spoke very little English.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. He used to sit in the rocking chair and smoke a cigar, and used to walk down to the kosher butcher. I can remember walking down with him to the kosher butcher. It was just a few blocks down the street. And he would go in the back and play cards. He would chew tobacco, walk down the street, spit. I remember once asking him, I think I was 5.
Yeah. No, I
mean, it's funny. Can I try that?
No, it's interesting how you went right to the grandparents and not even necessarily talking about your mom and dad. It was like that memory.
They had to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that was my grandfather, who did speak very little English. And my grandmother, I didn't know her. She died when my mom was very young. But on my father's side, they came from, we don't know if it was Hungary or Romania. Nobody really knows because the borders were always changing.
Right.
My grandfather on my dad's side, he didn't even have a last name. So he came to this town in Romania or Hungary, we don't know, but it was named Pearl. So he just took the last name of the town because he was more gypsy than Jew. He just took the last name of the town, and
so his name was Cher Pearl, basically. No, I don't know. What was it? What was his first name? What did you call him?
Joseph. He was Joseph.
Joseph Pearl. That's a great name, actually. It's a great American name when you did. Joseph Pearl. Fabulous name.
He's an interesting person. He's even written up in a footnote in a couple of history books, because when he came to the United States, he started a baker's union. And then when he had his own bakery, he wouldn't let the baker's union in.
That is so typically Jewish. That is so wonderful. Actually, Pullman, if you ever know the Pullman story, was the same way. He was trying to be all nice to his workers and pay them more than anybody else, and clean living conditions in a wonderful town to live, except everybody had to buy all their stuff at his store. And then when the workers started to, it's like, I don't want a union here. It's an interesting thing what capitalism does to people. And by the way, I'm a capitalist, so give me money.
That's a subject for another interview, isn't it?
It kind of is. Actually, we're coming up on a full hour here with the delightful and the sweet Don Pearl. Before I let you go, let me ask you, what is your happiest, fondest memory? Like a moment in your life, whether it was living in Mexico, which it sounds like That's sort of the one place, or it might have been a moment teaching, or it might have been a moment in your current retirement, some great, fond, happy memory for you.
Would you ask a heavier question, please?
I did. I asked about before, your wife had MS. I mean, we could have gone there. I didn't want to, but I wanted to go out with something happy and joyous and fun.
Let's say turning points. Okay, let's say turning points in life. Let's do that.
Okay.
All right. So a turning point in life was having lived in Mexico.
Right.
That was a turning point. And another turning point was working at this program, Oasis of Chandala, what I learned about people and about politics in that program. That was a turning point also. So I think I brought those dimensions with me for the rest of my life. What timing is this? Which makes me think of the for whom the bell tolls.
That was not a comment on our guest, ladies and gentlemen. I should have got one when I was speaking. That's beautiful.
Is that priceless or what?
I've got to end the conversation right there. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking to David Pearl and to his good friend, Pat. You can wave again, Pat, if you want to, very briefly, because we don't want you stealing the spotlight. But thank you so much, Pat, and to David Pearl for being a marvelous, lovely guest. I wish you certainly, obviously, stay healthy, stay well, stay active and activist, and say hi to all of Dave's friends also from the writing group and to all the fine people in Greeley, and be well and shalom to you.
Shalom. Rabbi, I want to thank you very much for this interview. It's been a delight.
Likewise.
It's been a delight. Thank you.
You too.
Are we still on?
I'm
Shalom.
going to remove you here somehow. No.
Shalom Aleichem.
Bye-bye. Go away.
Goodbye. Goodbye, Rabbi. Goodbye, Dave. Goodbye, Joyce.
Bye. Bye.
It's lovely. It's lovely. I loved every minute of it.
Me too. Get off. Oh.
I'm off.
No, you're not. I'm still seeing you. Go away.
Yeah.
You have to hit end meeting, please.
Go here?
Yeah. Ask Pat.
Leave meeting. I'm leaving the meeting.
Leave meeting.
Shalom.
There we go. Shalom.
Love to you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We'll just wait until he hits the damn button.
I did hit the button.
You gotta hit it again because you're still here. Bye-bye. Okay. Oh. Delightful times talking. Wasn't that a wonderful, wonderful conversation, ladies and gentlemen, with Don Pearl here in the neighborhood. This is Rabbi Sol Solomon.